My name is Mano Mohali, and together with Iranti-org, we created a 5-part conversation series about the draft Prevention and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill. I sat down with various stakeholders, academics, and activists to discuss and unpack their views about this controversial and contentious bill. The aim of this series is to increase public awareness about the bill, but more importantly, to increase public engagement with the bill.
Towards the end of 2016, the Department of Justice published the Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill for public comment. And the due date initially was the 31st of December, and there was a lot of pressure on civil society to come up with commentary within a matter of weeks, which we felt was really pretty unreasonable. And so Iranti and the Forum for the Empowerment of Women got together and discussed bringing together the LGBTI sector to discuss this bill and to understand it and to try and find a way of engagement. And so we had this public engagement where we invited a number of organizations in the legal sector as well. So when we convened this public engagement, we invited Weber Wenzel, which is our team of lawyers that do pro bono work for us, to assist us in really trying to unpack and understand this piece of law.
So specifically, the bill says that it's to provide for the offence of hate crimes and the offence of hate speech. So that's the first thing, and that's the first thing we need to note. So what this piece of legislation does is that it makes it an offence. It creates a new crime, which is called a hate crime, and it creates a new crime, I'm using this very loosely, which is hate speech. And at the onset, it's very important for us to note that what the drafters have chosen to do is that they've decided to make these two categories their own standalone crimes.
As a psychologist, I'm a proponent for hate speech and seeing hate speech as really damaging, but it's how we deal with it that is potentially a big part of what the conversation is going to be about today, I'm sure.
And I think the workshop and the outcomes of this workshop that we did was to say we need to find other comparative ways of engaging around this law. It's deeply complex, particularly for Black queer people, to think about this law strictly as just this is hate crimes and that it does and in its very method to make sure that it doesn't only serve and protect the fears of white LGBTI queer people in South Africa, but that it truly serves the needs of people who are completely the most vulnerable. And that vulnerability stems from an economic point of view, from an entire historical perspective, right? So there are all these things that we need to take into account. And so some of the outcomes of this engagement was to say that we need to further engage with the state.
I think what's really important here is that what we need to be looking for is a way to get at the systemic violences that are in our society. Right? Ideally, when we're thinking about addressing violence, we want to get at what is it that is reproducing that violence systemically, rather than how do we treat individual instances of these. And I guess the question for us really is, how does an individual treatment of a single crime relate to the deeper structural issues that are causing crime and that are perpetuating crime?
There should be a community court when dealing with such cases, because most of the time in violence, the police or the bureau, NACOR, they really don't know what's happening in the community. And we can say this is a hate crime, but how do we prove that? But people in the community who know Uletu is lesbian, know okay, fine, this was a hate crime.
We feel that government should play a very meaningful and active role in ensuring that its service providers are empowered and deeply understand the issue so that they can support and protect victims of crime.
When looking at violence against LGBTI people, we have decided to take the easy answer. We could have a very difficult conversation about, like, what is patriarchy and why do we feel entitled to other people's bodies, and why do we feel that when other people aren't available, we need to punish them or correct them.
It was very important for us to kind of pull this conversation together as organizations that really work on the front lines of documenting various forms of discrimination and violence that we as an LGBTI community face in South Africa. For a while, within South Africa, even though we have all these amazing legal protections and legal privileges, South Africa remains amongst the highest in the world in relation to violence and murders towards particularly black lesbians and black transgender persons in South Africa.
Because also we're tired of only just being the subject of research and theorizing, and we provide the case study. It's actually our time now to be the ones pontificating and saying, what is a hate crime anyway?
We must be careful in saying that you must accept what you have been given. This is the reason why we are dealing with what we are dealing with in this country. There's a much larger conversation going on, and we insist on separating ourselves as a minority instead of joining the general conversation of what is really wrong with the drafting and application of laws in South Africa. And so for me, I honestly cannot say that I can send comments and say, oh no, if you change the sentence to this, it will be all great. I think the way in which the system works is really problematic, and if I have to have that conversation for 15 years, then so be it.
It did come as a surprise to many organizations that the published bill combined hate speech and hate crimes as two very different issues, but combined in one piece of legislation. And of course, the immediate thoughts of us because of our context is that hate speech was included because of the severity of racism by white South Africans and the high amount of publicity that has come about in relation to just how much racism has appeared on social media platforms and various other platforms. But on the other hand, that hate crimes, which is particularly affecting a poor black LGBTI community, where we find most of the perpetrators are poor black men. And so in a way, in some weird metaphorical way of South Africa, it almost feels like hate speech is there because of white racist issues, and hate crimes is there, which is black male perpetrators. And we certainly don't feel that this in any way is a kind of legislation of synergy. In fact, there are such completely different issues affecting people in completely different ways. And so there needs to be a separation of these two particular crimes.
We were looking at how we could make a restorative justice into the bill more than what, the intention wasn't to further criminalize. As I said, with the hate crimes, it is things which are already considered crimes. That is one of the reasons that hate speech doesn't belong in here, because that is not considered a crime, and there is the Papuda's route to go to take up those issues, and all the other, questions around it, around freedom of speech, around how would you ever patrol and police, and how it can be used ultimately, obviously, against the very people who it is supposed to be protecting. So I think those are two very separate things.
At the end of the day, hate speech, in my understanding, it's what the person is feeling, and I think if in most cases, if you find somebody saying something that has to do with hatred, it mostly perpetuated by in the unjust of the past, apartheid, and where we as black people and white people come together. So if ever that on its own, it was the motivation around such, it has to do with how somebody treats one another. And I would not say that should be criminalized. I don't see any offense in doing such.
I don't know how we gauge between freedom of speech and hate crime. So I think it's a little bit tricky for me. Yeah. Jail would be a little bit extreme.
It should, but like it shouldn't be a serious thing. Like just for them to just know that it's not right. I feel like they should be punished or given a fine, but I feel like jail would be like taking it a little too far, because at the end of the day, everyone's entitled to their own opinion.
I think everyone should be protected in that kind of situation. But I don't think you should go to jail if a person didn't fight you, because what's bad is for me to put my hand on you.
We need to further engage with beyond the Department of Justice. We want to talk to the Department of Social Development, who runs various programs around victim empowerment. We need to talk to the Department of Health, etc. So there's several other things that need to happen to bring this kind of bill into a more intersectional approach around what needs to happen. So we were left with that mandate to continue this public engagement beyond the current extended deadline, which is the 31st of January, and to continue these engagements provincially and then with various other stakeholders in our country, like traditional leaders, religious leaders, and with members of parliament, of course. So I think we're currently still engaging with that, but we are preparing our submission for the 31st of January, and so that's currently underway. So I think we are also hosting several CBO engagements where we are bringing together community-based organizations to prepare their own submissions for the 31st. So I think that's been really an effective way to make sure that our voices are there and it's present and we are able to contribute meaningfully.